just for the recap of the study plan. So you guys, we did allude to this last time when we talked that you should be able at all material times. We have this study material or study plan or what they call tutorial plan in order to level up so that we can know which pace are we working in. So we are still on the introduction themes of study of life, and we're gonna be going in this pace. So last week I had said that we will start to tackle the past question papers even today, but I was talking to someone and I was going through one of the materials, and I think it's better that we go through the notes in this sequence chronologically. So then after that, especially because if you go through this study plan, there is a time frame specifically for the past question papers and the assignment, but obviously to some sessions which has got exercises, we will squeeze them too and it will work out very well. Last time we stopped, we were talking about the genomics large scale of DNA analysis and sequences, and we stop here. And the theme that requires the transfer of the transformation of energy and matter is that when you are going through to in the input of energy from the sun and the transformation of energy from one another, that's when the chemical energy which is generated, particularly from, if we are saying for example by plants, where you will find the producers, which is passed along the consumers, and the consumers are the organism that feed on other organism or their remains. You will understand what I mean by that when we go further. So also in terms of your exercises or in terms of your assignment, whenever you find a term like this on your notes, which I believe you do have at this moment, if you do not have, please inquire to the admin for Miss Prim if you need to have this kind of notes, but they are available in your study materials in your website. So that's where this chemical energy, which is generated by plants and other photosynthesis organisms, which are producers, is passed or is converted, and therefore these consumers, which are defined as such, they feed on other organisms. Is somebody saying something? Okay, that's Halalelo. She forgot to mute herself. So then when we continue, is that you will see there is what we call an energy flow. An energy flow is the flow we can just call, I remember if one of you attend BLG1502, there is a cycle or life cycle. It's kind of like that, but this is a flow where it's comprised of chemical cycling, where you see that the end there's an energy or light which come from the sun, yet the sun that we know, and there's going to be what we call a conversion, where plants convert sunlight to chemical energy, and those chemical energy, you see that organisms use this chemical energy to do the work. And you know the definition in primary where you used to describe, they will ask you what is energy. Is energy is the ability or capacity to work or to produce work or to do something. So that's how these organisms or animals, for the lack of a better term, you can say they use this chemical energy to do the work, and then those chemicals pass organism that eat the plants. You see, that's the conversion that those kind of symbiotic relationships, it's practiced also there, where the chemicals pass organism that eats those plants, they also get that, and the heat is lost from the ecosystem because of that. One of the benefits, if you can put it like that, here is a little bit of a decomposers that return chemicals to the soil, and then the plants will take chemicals from the soil into air, and then it will be converted, and it will form a position more or less like a cycle, but this energy flow. So I will explain this further. Your examiner or your lecturer might request you in a form of assignment to bring. I'm sure if you're going through one of your exercises or activities, you might have seen a question like this, where they will ask you to explain the chemical composition of a certain plants, or the chemical composition of plants in a form of energy flow, where you're going to have to describe and explain how the energy is converted from the light to come from the energy from the source of light, where it will be converted. So this the explanation in details, where organism use this energy to perform work, and some of this energy is lost to the surrounding as heat. Therefore, you will have a result where the energy will flow through an ecosystem, is usually entering as light or exiting as heat. Then the chemical cycle within an ecosystem, where they are used and then they are recycled in order to have the complete energy flow in completion. So from these molecules to ecosystem, interactions are important in biological systems. So interaction is like even ourselves. You will see in life, they will say you need to, there's a term where they will say you need to network, you need to go to conference, you need to meet people, so that you can have a broader view of what other is. Either you are in a field of whatever that you're doing, you have to interact. So interaction is also important in the system of biology. So interaction between components of the system ensure a smooth integrations of all the parts. So this all the true equally, which is well for components of ecosystem and all the molecules in a cell. So there's also an interaction within organisms. So this is interaction between components. This is where you need to pay attention to wording now, or to the, because the finer details are very, 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 it needs you to pay attention, or it needs you to take a little more focus on the finer details, because these terms, or this interaction, or this, how can I put it, or these terms, yeah, these terms, they may look very similar, and that's where your examiner may trick you into asking you question of giving a one word term. So give the term which describe such and such, and you might find that this is very similar and it's not similar. Also in the multiple question part, you will find that they will bring question like this, but you need to pay attention to finer details, because this interaction between components, where organs, tissues, cells, and molecules that make up a living organism are crucial to their smooth operations. So by this is that many biological processes can self-regulate through a mechanism called feedback. So they may ask you, what is the mechanism which organism in the interaction they regulate themselves? You're gonna have to describe it as a feedback. So therefore, it is also required, it is also termed, or in a clinical term, as a feedback regulation, where the output or the product of the process that regulate that very process. The most common form of regulation in living organism is negative feedback. What is negative feedback? In which the response reduces the initial stimulus. So where the less common form of regulation is, it's positive feedback. What is positive feedback? Is a feedback in which the end product speeds up its own production. So already here there are three terms here which you might want to look up for. There's a feedback regulation, which we talked about in the previous slide. That is the biological process that that can self-regulate through the mechanism. And this negative feedback has two parts, or they have two types, if you can say, which is a negative feedback and a positive feedback. A negative feedback is the one which response reduces the initial stimulus, but the positive feedback is the one in which the end product speeds up its own production. So that's the difference that you may want to look. They may extract or abstract a question which says define what is a feedback regulation, and also distinguish between the two examples. Already there, it could be a 6-mark question where you're gonna have to define this feedback regulation, and you also want to describe. When they say describe, you don't just say the feedback regulation has positive feedback and negative feedback only. If they say describe, you're gonna also have to explain what negative feedback is and also explain what positive feedback is. So if they say define what feedback regulation is, and also name their examples. That's when, if you just name them only, you might get away with that, because you might argue that the examiner or your lecturer did not reveal if whether you should also define. But to be on a safe side, you should always describe a term and also define it, so that you could be on a safe side, so that you don't lose any marks. So this with an example of a negative feedback, where you will find that there's an insulin producing cell in a pancreas, and therefore this here is a little fella which is an insulin, and this is a glucose in the blood, where there's a transferring, and the feedback which is coming, which is, by the way, a negative feedback. So the first process is that the high blood glucose stimulates the pancreas to secrete this insulin. So this insulin will then be circulated through the body. That's just a movement. Then this insulin will bind the cells, causing them to take up the glucose, and liver cells to store this glucose in the blood. Therefore, the final product would that be the glucose does not stimulate the insulin secretion. And the feedback, and this is just a position that they're just noting for the animation of the negative feedback, which you probably see the enzyme 4 and the enzyme 5, and the bottom one is the enzyme 6. And then as we go further with these interactions and organisms interaction with other organisms and the physical environment, we talk about that. Just think of this, the word interaction. I'm sure you know the word interaction. Interaction is just to interact, to mingle. So this organism here, we're talking about how they interact with other organisms, right? Now we're talking about how they interact with other organisms, and also with their physical environment. The physical environment is where they inhibit, but you will see as we go. So at the ecosystem level, somewhere they will ask you what is an ecosystem. Each organism interacts with other organisms. That's on the ecosystem level. So this interaction may be beneficial or harmful to one or both organisms. You know where we are going with this. And organisms also interact continuously with physical factors in the environment, and the living environment, which is affected by the living things which are there. So if I can just pause right there, when we're talking about the physical factors which could affect the organism, let's just say that organism per se. I'm just making an example. We are saying it's a, what can I say? Let's say it's a fish. what is the organism? What is the factors, physical factors, which you can think of? Just one. Anyone you can type. Obviously, that organism, its habitat obviously will be in a wetland. You can say a pond. We don't have to say a sea, but we can just say a pond or a wetland, which is in a river. You know, a river. It's it's comprised of different streams. That streams can have I forgot the different kind of streams for rivers, but within the river system, there's a pool, there's a, you see the velocity, the upstream, the riparian zone, the vegetation cover, where that kind of, you can, a river, every time when there's a stream or flow of water, it's always called wetland, but you can categorize it as a dam or a river. Obviously, the dams that are man-made dams, which are created for obviously for commercial purposes, but usually there's these people who study limnology, there's and water scientists. There's a river which is there. So let's say if we're talking about a fish, the physical factors, we'll be talking about the water there, the rocks there, the trees there, all these other surroundings which are there. But yeah, let's continue. So another example is that if you see this little fella here, this Mr. Elephant, Eli, there is a factor which is sun. We talk about this when we were talking the sun, which come as a light source, energy. So this leaves absorb the light, which is energy from the sun. Then this leaf, you can see here there is a cycle here for carbon dioxide and oxygen, which leaves takes in carbon dioxide from the air and release them as oxygen. And then the animals, this Mr. Elephant, they will eat the leaves and fruit from that tree, returning the nutrients and minerals to the soil. Those things that they will put when they're eating the remnants, when they're chowing it, they will just split and it return in a way to the soil as minerals. But to them is their waste products. And the water and minerals in the soil are then taken up by the tree through the roots, and then the leaves from the ground, and they're decomposed by that organism and return to mineral. So this is the energy flow which happened and all of that. I think there's an explanation you see here. Mr. Eli will be here eating the leaves from the tree. Although these people who know in the parks or everywhere, they'll say this quiet animals is one of the selfish animal which can just go and just break the whole tree just to eat some few leaves and all that. So if I may ask another question also, how do you think, what you agree, we're talking about the interactions between organism and their physical environment. What do you think the is the benefit that animals, these mammals, let's say mammals, let's bring to the picture something which is not there, an example of a monkey or a baboon or something like that. What do you think they benefit the environment with? What do you think the animal benefit the in an environment? How does the animals help? Or even this elephant that we see here? What do you think the other benefits that they have to the environment?
My glasses fell.
Yeah, I can see that.
Can't see
Good.
a
That's a
word.
very good answer. That's a very good answer. Yes, channel good. Animal that speed, yes, and regulate the population of the. That's a very good answer. Yeah. Asad, you wanna go? I see you unmute yourself. No. Yeah, that's a very good. example, the answer that you give, Chanel, is very perfect. The animal, yes, because animal produce carbon dioxide, plants need oxygen, yes, for photosynthesis. That's a very good one. But the more practical one is the one that Chanel gave, that you see, when these animals, they are eating fruits, let's say they're eating fruits like the trying to think of the fruit, the plant species. Where is my botany friend when I need a help? The when they're eating the fruits, they they travel all over the place. So they do what they practice, what we call seed dispersal. So that plant species, it will be dispersed, and you ask yourself, nobody's planting these trees here, but how come do they just spread across the world? Is that these animals, is it may either be baboons or monkeys or other animal species, when they eat that fruit or when they partake that fruit, they don't eat it necessarily next to the tree. So they travel, they eat it maybe 500 meters away, or yeah, probably, I know I might be stretching it, a kilometer away from where they took the plant, and then for it gets spread. And it's even worse if they eat it maybe next to the riparian zone. A riparian zone is the edge of a river or edge of a stream. So in the edge of a stream, you'll find that there are more plants, because that's where the nutrients, when there's a erosion, or when there's a, you'll find that next to the stream or next to a river, the vegetation is very rich. By vegetation, when I say vegetation is rich, I just mean that there are a lot of plants which are healthier because it's next to the more nutrients. Those plants, they don't struggle with water. If they have to stretch their roots, they can stretch their roots because the stream is right there. So the the, the they get access to resources. Yes, it's also like bees and flowers. They also help Hahiso with that case. So that's one of the interactions that happens. So it's like that. It's also what can you give, what you can get, and probably you'll find that in terms of these interactions, you'll find that the where you will find more organisms, I don't want to say animals, more organisms, it also depends on the kind of environment, the physical environment which is there. So probably you're not going to find in a type of vegetation which is more like a desert area, more elephant. You will not find a lot of them. You'll find them in a maybe a semi-arid, no, not even a semi-arid, in a more savanna vegetation, because that's where there are more resources, or there are more food resources where they could be interaction. So it also, there's that composition where the more there is to the environment, the more interaction you will see to these fellows or animals. So each organism interacts continuously with its physical factors in its environment. So humans, for example, interact with our environment sometimes with dire consequences, with an example that for the past 150 years, humans have greatly increased the burning of fossil fuels and release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Like you remember last week, we talked about that the most challenge that we as biologists or scientists, we are trying to solve this problem called climate change. Climate change, where we as humans, in all the organisms, I'm sure we're gonna have to say shame on us as human beings. Of all the elephant compared to the lion, compared to everything, we are the one which are polluting this earth or this atmosphere with our increasing of burning fossil fuels. Also the I know we don't have electricity and everything, but part of what they're saying is also what we need to think forward, so that our grandchildren or the people that come should find this atmosphere or this world inhabitable. We need to lower the burning of fossil fuels. that release the carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is the results of global warming, which is the cause of climate change, which is the biggest problem that we are facing. And the wind precipitation patterns also are shifting, you see, and extreme weather events such as storms and droughts are occurring more often. The case in point, people, I know maybe most of you are from KZN. I know, yeah, I think 2 weeks ago, if you listen to the news, we were commemorating or that sad event which happened last year with the floods and everything, where a lot of people were dispossessed from their houses and everything. It was very sad if you saw the news. And you see,
Mr. Lelofole,
yes.
my apologies. I just wanted to know if you did take note of the questions or one question and a comment in our chat box.
Yeah.
So is it like bees and flowers?
Yeah. I already answered that.
My 100,000 apologies there.
I already like, so I did answer you, right? Just show by thumb. If I did, I think. Where is Hakiso? I see Hakiso. Are you seeing Hakiso? Yes, he got this time. Yes, thank you. Yeah, so also this with the global warming and with the burning of fossil fuels, it has shifted. It has shifted the precipitation or because like usually the rainfall. See, back then when we were young, yeah, they will tell you that the rains will normally the season of rains will normally be late November and somewhere in December before Christmas there, and early January. That's the season where there's a heavy rainfall. But now, like last year, the floods which happened in Cape, it was so extreme. It was around March, in the mid of March, which is like it's very weird. So there's a pattern, there's a change with the precipitation patterns which are shifting, and the weather events are extreme. This word extreme, it's very important. So extreme is just that when it's a hot, it become extremely hot, of like the place that I come from in Venda. Don't ask me, it's very hot. In December, the temperature can reach up to 38, believe me or not. And sometimes you see, even, I don't know, the people who are in Joburg, you're gonna experience it when the temperature becomes very low and very low. And the extreme is that when you're talking about extreme, you're talking about places like I haven't been, but I have a friend who's from there, like in Namib, where there's a desert. So. Okay, let me not make this example, but there's an example which is gonna come in. I saw it in your exercises, which is gonna come in the form of a question. It will make sense better then. So as habitats deteriorate, plants and animal species shift their ranges to more suitable location. Like for instance, let's say there's a floods which is gonna wipe the whole environment. There's a shift. The habitat is no longer inhabitable to the plants or to the animals, so they have to shift to more suitable location. Just like us human beings, like people in the countries where there are wars and everything, they shift, they move to more suitable location to look for a greener pastures. That's what even animals and plants species do if they are habitat or their environment. But I'd like you to use the word habitat. I don't, so that you can be more specific. If they deteriorate or they are altered or they are perhaps shifted by such events such as such storms and droughts. So extreme weather events could be storm we can find, because although an environment needs a little bit of, not a little bit, they need a rain, they need that in maybe 2 seasons or 3 seasons in a year of rain. But if they do those rain turn into a storm, and then it could make a shift in that habitat. Also, in turn, if that environment doesn't receive enough rain, which turn into a drought. So maybe some species with low tolerance to be affected, and then they will have to shift. So population of many species are now shrinking in sizes or even disappearing. We're talking about extinction now, where you find that if 10 years ago in an environment, there were different species of Lantana camara, or there are different species of Sclerocardia pirea. That's what is it? That's a marula tree. But you find that there are just few, and here, and you find that there are a lot of species of elephant shrew. There are a lot of species of dacres. There are a lot of species of impa. I remember before I moved into my it's no longer a village, but it was a village back then when we came. We used to There were few houses there. We used to hunt ourselves. There were more or less like a rabbits which could just appear every now and again when you're saying. But more and more when people are moving in, more and more when people are moving in, there were less and less spaces, patches where those rabbits will use or inhibit. And slowly but surely, I don't think they just disappear or shrink in size, and we no longer find them. And today, even though there's still some patches of habitat, which is, for the lack of a better term, or for better term that you can relate with as a bush, but you won't even find them anymore because they have shrunk in sizes or they disappear to a suitable location. What did I do here? There we go. Like this little fella here, you can see it has to coincide or move to environment which is suitable to its survival mode and all that. So the core theme, evolution account for the unity and diversity of life. So the evolution is also one. It's a big concept. It's a concept. I also believe that evolution should not just be part of biology. Evolution should just be its own concept, which we explain itself, and because evolution accommodates, let's be honest, all the sectors. Even it provoke a conversation in terms of religion and all that. So it's not just explaining biology, but it's explaining a whole lot of concept. So this idea that makes a logical sense of everything that we know about the living organism, and for religious purposes, just I apologize if this offends, but this is just a biological sense of view, for biological point of view. Uh, the scientific explanation for both the unity and diversity of organism is evolution. Although we know that evolution is the concept of a gradual process which occurs over time, where we talk about how life starts, where life starts, how we are, how individuals are the way they are, where do they come from. You find that individual of the same species, their descendants, they appear in a certain way, yet their parents or their grandparents, they don't appear the same way, but they are from the same species. But don't worry, we'll see about this when we continue. So this is the concept that living organisms are modified, yes, descendants of a common ancestry. Common ancestry is that we come from says common one ancestor, yes, that one ancestor, and then we branch as descendants, and therefore the abundance of evidence supports the occurrence of this evolution, that there are also the evidence is, it lies on the fossil fuels and all these other sub concept which are within, that we will learn and understand as we go further. So is this statement by Theodosius Dobzhansky, I hope I'm pronouncing it very well, that nothing in biology makes sense except in the light of evolution. You can believe that, but that's one of the great scientists who once said that. So biology, in biology, or one of the concept of biology, I think I mentioned this last week, is that, or I mentioned in BLG 1502, that one of the most concept in biology or in science is the classification. But isn't it, even in life, everything is about classification. We're trying to classify. So classification is a very big concept as well. Because even when you got individuals, you have to classify them into species. Those species, you need to classify them, or you need to classify it into families, you need to classify it into genuses, you need to classify it into species, you need to classify it into population, you need to classify it into community, you need to classify it into ecosystem, you need to classify it into biosphere, and all of that into that hierarchy. So classification of the diversity of life, that approximately over 1.8 million species have been identified and named to date. Over 1.8 million. When we talk about that, when we say species, we're not talking, we as human, we belong to one species. I hope you get that. So when they say 1.8 million species, they're not saying you and me and me. You and me, we are counted as one species. So which means that individual, like a fly, and or something else, like a lizard, like a bird, a lot of species of birds, that like bat, there are a lot of species of bat. They are classified and named. They have each individual, they're classified and named into. So that's why it's when somebody is studying, let's say you are studying about locust, you are going to your village in Mudantani, I don't know, or some village in KZN, you want to study the distribution of locust in your area. You gonna go and do what we call field collection, where you're gonna have to collect the data. When you collect the data, obviously, because you're gonna be a good student, you're gonna go to the field. When you go to the field, you're gonna go to collect the locusts. I don't know how you're gonna collect them, but you're gonna study about and do research how do you do that. You use the nets, mist net, there are mist nets and everything. And then when you do that, obviously you're not gonna collect all the locust of I know there's a municipality called Muzimikulu or Muzimikulu in KZN. Sorry for people from KZN if I'm butchering your name or whatever. Then when you collect that, you're gonna collect what is called a representation. But there's a possibility that when you're collecting your data or you're collecting the locust, when you come back, you're gonna come to what you call a library, where you're gonna have to check what you have collected. What you have collected as the species which has been identified. Possibly 90% chances or 98% chances of that you're going to collect species which has already been collected somewhere else, because you just want to check the distribution if these species are occurring there. And there will be one chance, I'm saying one chance, that you're going to find that species which you cannot find in the library, which you cannot find. You're going to go to experts and say, identify this species, they cannot identify. What does that mean? Is that you found a new species. You can name it yourself. You can name it and say it's called, who should I use an example of? You can say Dicrostatia Debson, or Dicrostatia Pindile, or Deconstratia Pindicius, because Pindile is the one who got it and named it. So that's how they name and identify the species. And they're saying approximately up to 1.8 million species has been identified and named up to date. So each species is given two part name. The genus is like a surname to which the species belongs to, and the species name, which is the unique to that particular species. So like our surname, we can have many individuals can have the same surname. Am I right? Yes, that's the genus. But you need to have the species name is unique to that particular species. Then, like for example, Homo sapiens, then the estimate of the total, and there's also called example. Let's say example of what can I example of what is the scientific name of a thorn tree? It's very common. Of a thorn tree, it's not sclerocrira. Scientific name of a thorn tree. There are Vechelia species, and acacia. That's the one that you know a lot. Acacia. So acacia, there are a lot of you have heard of acacia, right? I try to use examples of common names or common species. Eventually, a lot of you might not know. I will understand because just let's be honest for botanists. But acacia, so there will be acacia sedalia. There will be acacia. The most common one is acacia carew. You know acacia, right? Acacia. Everybody know acacia? Just hold the thumb. That tree with a thorn. Where if when we were young, it was very common in Limpopo. I don't know about other provinces here, but I do see a little bit of ETV in here in Gauteng. So acacia, there are like acacia carew, acacia what. So that's a perfect name. So the estimate of the total number of the species that actually exist range from 10 to over 100 of millions. That's how the diversity of life is classified, or it is, because even up to date, my point here, what I'm trying to say is that when they say approximately 1.8 million species, when we are studying, when we are unraveling, if you're studying about whatever that you're studying about plants, you're studying about bacteria, you're studying about when you're studying something, there's a possibility that you're gonna find a species which has not been classified or which has not been named, or not classified. That's a wrong term. That's a wrong term that I've used. Not which has named, because obviously when you are classifying, when you are naming it, you're gonna name it on a species level, but obviously you will know that this is from a kingdom of Animalia. This is from the order of Lepidoptera. This is an order. I'm just making an example. This is an order for or family of Certenidae. This is an order from and this is a fly, or this is a butterfly, or this is a damson fly. And then but you know the genus, but you don't know the species because it has not been named, and then you can name yourself. The point that I'm trying to say is that every time somebody is doing a research, there's a possibility that a new species will be added, and maybe in 5 years we're not going to be talking about this 1.8 million. We're going to be talking more, and even currently it might be more than that, because there are other publications which are even occurring at as we're speaking. So the three domains of life, organisms are currently divided into three domains of life, which bacteria, archaea, archaea, forgive my pronunciation, and eukarya. The prokaryotes include the domains of bacteria and archaea. And once again, when you are reading this or when you're studying this, this is very important. I saw a lot of questions which are derived from this and differentiation. So you may need to pay more attention to wording and to description of terms, to description of what you may want to put, because there are a lot of questions in your exercises and in your assignment and in your past exam. The domain eukarya includes all eukaryotic organisms. So what they may say here, they may say the domain eukaryotic, the domain which includes all eukaryotic organisms. And then you have to give it as a, they will be giving it as a one word or multiple choice. Then you're gonna have to have an understanding and an outline that they are talking about eukarya. Then the domain eukarya include the protist and three kingdoms. What are those three kingdoms? What are those? Which are plants that produce their own food by photosynthesis, the fungi, which absorb nutrients, the animal which ingests their food and all that. We will explain further as we go on. The most numerous and diverse eukaryotic are protists. That's the definition there. Describe eukaryotes which are the most numerous and the most diverse in a one-word term. Then you're gonna have to tell us that is protists, and these are mostly single-celled organisms. So there's another definition of protists there. They are not only the most numerous and diverse, but they are also the most single cells. So the examiner might ask 3 questions to describe one thing in different forms. And usually sometimes when they wanna trick you, not trick you, if they just wanna, because they know that you guys are smart, they'll make even conservatively in multiple choices, and you might think, nah, they cannot be asking about protists conservatively. So, but you may find that they are classified into several groups. These protists, some of them are less closely related to other protists than they are to plants, animal, or fungi. So this is just an illustration of a diagram where there's a domain bacteria, then there's a domain archaea there, there's a domain eukarya there where there's a kingdom plantae and kingdom fungi. Like here they mentioned that if you remember here that this eukaryotic include the protists and 3 kingdoms, which are plants, kingdom plantae, and fungi, then and also an animal which ingests their own food, but it's not included here in what we're talking about. But here we're talking about kingdom plantae, kingdom fungi, and kingdom animalia, and then there are protists. And you need to see also the distribution of the microliters, meters, and here also in the domain of bacteria. Then this is the description of bacteria, archaea, the eukarya, and the kingdom animalia, protists, which is there. Kingdom plantae, you don't need to worry about this. And domain kingdom eukarya, and domain eukarya. So, David, we have a question here on the chat box. I see. No, that's an old one. Okay, yeah, that's an old one. So, as we go forward, there's also what you call a unity in the diversity of life. So a striking unity underlines the diversity of life for if we talk about the example, we should use the example of DNA, which is the universal genetic language which is common to all organisms, the DNA, which is the genetic language, and is sort of like the unity of evidence that many features of the cell structures have. Therefore, the history of life as documented by fossils, which is another concept which explains evolution, and other evidence of the saga changing earth, which is more or less like they can refer to the billion years old, then you will see that this diagram where you talk about cilia windpipe cells and the cross section there of a cilia, the paramecium. It's unfortunate that you guys, you will see most of this when you enroll for your BLG1603, I think, where there's a possibility where you can do practicals and where you will have to do cross section of this in form of a microscope, big diagram, and visualization that we can see. Then there's a cross section of a cilium, the cilia of this is a paramecium, and then there's a one type of cells there, and this you don't need to worry about this. But the most specific concept or theory of evolution has been explained. I'm sure you know. You see this, even they imitated in TV series and all that, by Charles Darwin and the theory of natural selection, where this Charles Darwin, as most of you might or might not know, He has published on the origin of species by means of natural selection. This was started being published or being documented in 1859, where Darwin made 2 points: that species show evidence of descendant with modification from common ancestry, which I think most of us we concur with that species we came from common ancestor. And the other one, which is that natural selection is the mechanism behind the descent of modification. So modification is that natural selection is the concept where there is a not yeah, it's part of the law of use and disuse, that when we are evolving, or when you your offsprings, or our offsprings, or the offsprings or the descendant of an organism, they will have modification, or they will have mechanisms which equips them to to endure against the challenges of the environment in the next in their next environment. That the challenges that you face, or the characteristics that you will develop, characters you will develop, mechanism in the organism which better suited you to your environment. Like you saw the Galapagos penguins, that they had to develop the big shape, because it was a mechanism and modification in terms of their food source, the kind of food that they feed on, and all of many examples which we will see. So this theory explains the duality of unity and diversity. Duality of unity is just a sense or meaning of all the individuals or organisms, that this occur in form of, or in a uniform manner. That you'll find that if, for example, is one group of species, they have a duality, or they have similar characteristics that are just developing in the next generation, and that diversity will be formed in the next group of species, or in their descendants, as their population is growing and growing further. That's the famous book there, by The Origin of Species by Natural Selection, by Mr. Charles Darwin, and other books right there. The Red-Shouldered Hawk. There you see the developed mechanism, the Americano flagino, the Ganton penguin, and all this. These are mechanism. Red Hawk will explain what does that mean, or the mechanism in which they developed in order for their descendant to survive. Because if they didn't develop some sort of mechanism, they were not going to survive in the in their environment, or their population was going to be wiped away. So they had to have a modification, or a development of some sort, in order to help them survive, or to have an a mechanism which is going to equip them to survive. This video we're not gonna check this video, but it's there in your study materials, so you can go look for it. Like the tortoise, how their mechanism to protect them against their enemies, or against their prey, so that they won't be preyed and they won't be victimized, and then they won't be able to be wiped away, so they can be able to survive. Then Darwin observed that individuals in a population vary in their traits, yes, and many which seems to be heritable. So we, although we are from the same species, or other organisms which belong to different species, or even different genuses. It might be a plant species, it might be an animal organism. They vary in populations, and their population vary in traits, and many of those traits which seems heritable. Heritable is just means that they will inherit those traits. that they have, and more offsprings are produced than the one that survives. So competition therefore is inevitable. So there's always going to be competition for survival, competition in terms of food, in terms of resources, in terms of environment. There's always that possibility of competition which is going to be there. Then species generally suit their environment after they have inherited those traits and after they have survived in those competition which are inevitable in that in that community. And the reason behind that was that the individuals that are best suited to the environment are more likely to survive and produce, which I think most of us can attest to that those individuals that have the best traits and they have outcompete their other counterparts, they are more likely to survive and produce. Therefore, over time or gradually, more individuals in a population will have advantageous traits. So the traits that will if you've got a big or you've got a character where you have a shell shape where if the prey or the predators who feeds on you and you have the shell that you can hide yourself in, and there's another individual who don't have the shell that protects them against the predators when they come. It means those predators, when they come to prey, they will wipe all those species or all those individuals in that population who don't have the shell. Therefore, over time or gradually, you will find that population is dominated by the individuals with the advantageous trait. What is the advantageous trait? Is the tortoise, which has a shell which can protect them. Therefore, evolution occurs as an unequal reproductive success of individuals. It's not equal. There's no equity because the one who have more advantageous traits or the one who have better or strong traits is the one who will survive, is the one that will produce their traits to their future. Then the natural environment selects the propagation of beneficial traits. That's the process which Charles Darwin referred to as natural selection, where the environment itself selects the propagation of the beneficial traits or the individuals with advantageous traits will have their traits which will be passed on to their next offsprings or to their next descendants, and their traits will be passed to their descendants, and those traits will be the ones which are dominating their descendants in the future. That's natural selection, which is explained there. Then population, the which will be like, if you check this little example here, you'll find that this that there are more or less like a beetles. Is it? Yeah. These individuals with the population with varied inherited traits. Yes, you see some are light, some are a little bit dark, but some are light here. And then you find that there's a predator. The ones that the predator is gonna go, because the ones that are darker, the environment or the ground is a bit darker. So one of the disadvantages of the ones which are dark is that they are less visible than the ones which are light. So this little fella here will come here, and when he's looking for something to eat, this look like a sting bug though. Then they come here, they will eliminate individual with certain traits. What are the certain traits? And the reproduction of the certain traits are the ones that are light. So you will find that in the environments, what remains are the ones that are dark. And the ones that are dark are the ones that are going to be mating and producing their offspring. So in the near future, you will find that there's only the increased frequency of traits that enhance the survival of only the dark ones only. So that's natural selection results in the adaptation of organism to the circumstances of their way of life and the environment. For example, bat wings, for example, are example of adaptation where they were adapting to their environment. You see this little fella here? It's a what's the name of the species here? That's a horseshoe bat, which is the just student just check the chat box where Prim is giving you an announcement that you should put the attendant register your student number in the chat box. So don't forget to do that. So this little fella here, the horseshoe, I think it's a horseshoe or Slipheni. There are different types of species. So they develop that character where they be able to. You see now I cannot. I'm trying to close your chat here. Okay, thank you. Where, for example, they have an example of an adaptation for that bird. Then the tree of life. As we continue to the tree of life, so because Darwin explained also that he explained two concepts, if you can still remember, that individual that's best suited for the environment will produce and are more likely to survive, and that over time individuals in a population will have an advantageous traits. Then when we go to the tree of life, the shared common anatomy, for example, in the mammalian limbs reflects the inheritance of the limb structure to a common ancestor, because one of the concept that he had explained is that we come, because these are the two concepts that Darwin explained. Number one is that we come from the common ancestor. We are descendants which originate from a common ancestor. And the second one was that, the one that we were just talking about, that natural selection, that individuals in the future, you pass individuals with better or advantageous traits into their future. So here with the shared anatomy of mammalian limbs reflects the inheritance of the limb structure from a common ancestor. Therefore, the fossil provide additional evidence of the anatomical unity from those descent with modification. And Charles Darwin proposed that natural selection could cause an ancestral species to give rise to two or more descendants. Like for instance, if you check the finches, we talk about the Galapagos. Did you say something? Did anybody say something? Or am I hearing things now? No, nobody said anything. Okay. Like, for example, the finches of the Galapagos Iceland are descendant from a common ancestor. So the evolutionary relationship are often illustrated in a tree-like diagram that show an ancestor and their individual. So this is also, you will note it further when you further your studies, that even genetically, in genetics, there's what you call a phylodiagram or phylogenetic tree, where you are explaining where, if the study which you're focusing on, you're explaining the study that you're focusing on, that you're studying on, that you may actually have to explain its phylogenetic tree or where it comes from with that particular moment where you are studying, or what. So it would be like this. So these finches is their ancestor. You can see that they branch. Here they go. There's the green Weber finch, which is this this is its scientific name, which is which is in italics. It's also known as an insect eater. There's a vegetarian finch, which is, its scientific name is Platypisia carisostris. Yeah. I don't have to worry about my pronunciation, but you guys need to worry about your writing, which is also known as a fruit eater. Which means that it feeds on fruits. This one, it feeds on insects. There's a woodpecker finch. These also are the most commonly known, which are insect eater as well. And then there's a small tree finch, which is also an insect eater. And also in another branch, there's a common caucus finch, which is a carcass eater. And there's a large ground finch, which is a seed eater, which means that this one feeds which one means that this one feeds on insects. So how do they branch? You see that here, this is the first breaking point here, where these ones belong to, although they are categorized or they are branched according to what they feed on. So this also means that their distribution will be different. And it will also means that in terms of competition, all you can also attest that the species which are gonna be struggling or will have more competition are the one that eat insects. They will have more competition. And you can see by their morphology or their big layout, how because Darwin is saying organism will develop traits that will better equip them. So you see these ones that feeds on seeds, they have such as like strong beak. Why is that? Because seeds obviously they are more harder in terms of digestion, in terms of because they use their beak to feed. They're more harder compared to insects. Insects, their dietary is very soft. You find that the insects like a lot of insects are very soft in their diet and in their because even the birds feed on them, and also the ones that feed on carcass, their beak should always all be softer, and the one that have to feed on fruits. Their beak have to be sharp and very big compared to the one. So this is the distribution and characteristics and differentiator. So the one that had soft beak, or the one that didn't have beaks, the finch, they had to be wiped away. They had to be wiped away. They could not branch because the common ancestor of finches in general communities and geospiza, here are they, and you can see, and you can also notice here that the original common ancestor, their beak was slightly tinier than the one, but as they evolved, as their descendant have better and equipped beak, depending on what they feed to equip it, is a trait which is being advantageous so that they will be able to survive in their communities and in their future, and their descendant inherited those traits in order for them to survive. Hence, they're the ones which are there and everything. Any question up to so far? I feel like I've been talking for a while with myself. No? No? On the chat box, still the student number. Say, okay, yeah. All right. So, in the absence of question, when we continue, then scientists make observation and form a test of hypothesis. So, okay, let me just, okay, so what is a hypothesis? Generally, so anybody with an answer who want to text, who want to? Okay, go for it. Akisa?
So I actually just have a question from the previous slide now. No?
Sure.
Is there anything before the ancestral finch? Like, is the ancestral finch part of a bigger branch, or does it just start with the ancestral finch?
Or You mean in terms of yeah, obviously it is from a bigger branch, because these are from a kingdom. The finch belongs to kingdom Animalia, with a phylogeny, and their phylogeny, it comes from kingdom Animalia, and it has a certain genus species. And obviously this a finch is just a species which is there, and then these are types of species. Remember we said the genus is more or less like a surname. You can have different surnames. You can have different surname, but you will have certain species. So in this nature, the genus will be the finch there, and then there are different species of finches there. You can see where there's a Citraderia, there's Platydesia, and then there's a Camalynchus. There's a Camalynchus here, which are from the same genus. And also you can see that there are others which also feed on the insects here, because this classification, or this branch, is particularly distinguished according to what they feed on, not necessarily according to all the species or all the genuses of finches, but particularly more this is to classify or to just illustrate or to show the distribution of the ones that have survived or the ones that are more common, because he is saying the one that will survive are the one which have traits or features which better equip them to survive. So to answer you, yes, there are other, this is not just the start of the branch, but this is just a start of the branch of the finch, but there's another one also which is not beneficiary for this exercise of other finch species, which probably if you can just look up, you might find that they are not common as much as this species, particularly due to the fact that Darwin is talking about that their traits are not passed on more to the next gen. Hope I've answered you.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Any question? The question from the answer. Oh, cerebral, yeah, persistence is a proposed answer, yes, or an explanation to a scientific question, yes. I like the word that the term that you used, cerebral, is a proposed. Like if you wanna embark on a research or you wanna embark on an experiment, so in that experiment you're gonna put what they call a proposal. So in that proposal, you're going to tell us, why are you doing this experiment? You will do what you call an objectives of the study, or the objective of the experiment. Okay, you have an objective of that experiment, you have objective of that study. So in that objective, this outcome, what is it that you are expecting? So you will put the what you call problem statement. If after you put a problem statement, you will have to put a proposed answer or a proposed conclusion or a proposed expectation or a proposed results that you're expecting to find. So if you said, okay, we are going to Cape Town, we are going to study if these Galapangas are there. I'm just making an example. And you will say a proposed answer will be like in the literature review. Literature is just like the studies that others have done before, because most of us, you're not going to do a study which has not been done before. You're not going to study and you're going to study something which probably 60% of it has been done before, even if it's not necessarily the same, but there are people who have done something which is similar or related to what you want to study, so that you call it a literature review, where you go and study what other people have studied. So from what others has done in the previous studies, you can reduce a conclusion or a proposed answer and say, due to what previous studies have found in the last study in Cape Town, we expect that we will find not more than 6 species of Galapangas in Cape Town because of 1, 2, 3. So it's a proposed answer. You are right, Sarepo. It's a yes. That's a nice term. An educated guess, or yeah, which I don't like the term guess, because the guess it's but you put it very nicely if you said guess, but it's you are proposing it according or based on the previous information that you have, or the previous literature that you have. So here, when we continue, is that the word science is derived from the Latin, which means to know. The the inquiry is the search for information, yes, obviously, for natural phenomena. Scientists use the process of inquiry that includes making observation, forming logical hypotheses, and testing them. So that's exactly what science is, and what a scientist does. This statement here. Anybody who has, okay, I see another message in the chat box. Okay, yes. Okay, yes. So anybody, just show by the thumb. Anybody who has watched Big Bang Theory? Big Bang Theory. It's a comedy series. Big Bang, yes. Yes. So most of you might know a character called Sheldon. He always make this statement that when they are making fun of him, say, guess what? He said, I don't guess. That's why I was saying to who's the one who make a comment there. That's why I was saying to Serepo that, oh, not Serepo, the Matapelo, that a hypothesis, when you said it's an educated guess, it's not necessarily a guess, because we as scientists, you as biologists, okay, you are called scientists, you make observation. If I go and sit and just like I'm going to UNISA, I want to see what example can I make? I want to see if I want to use an example that, let's just say let's just go and say let's say I said I want to see who I go to schools, right? I want to see, let's say it's a school in rural areas and a school in the suburb here in Pretoria, and I just want to go and say I want to see if the students, how many students watches or no, the Big Bang Theory. I'm just making an example. Like Big Bang Theory emulates scientists, emulates people who are interested in science, and I just go to the school and do count and stand there with a questionnaire and say, hey, do you watch Big Bang Theory? The first person say yes. Do you watch Big Bang Theory? The second person no, say no. Do you watch Big Bang Theory? And out of the 50 students in a suburb school, maybe 43 said yes. And I go to the rural school. I ask the same 50 students randomly. So I'm not saying girls only or boys only. I'm just saying the person who will gonna come only. Okay, this is the perfect example. Let's say I went to a university of UNISA. I go and ask. I wanna see who watches the Big Bang Theory. I go to a faculty of science. Our faculty is in Florida, right? I think so. I go to Florida, and then I ask people, 50 students, and then I go to here in Pretoria, which is the faculty, I'm just making an example, faculty of BCom accounting, and ask the same to people, students who just come there, say, do you watch? You may find that the ones which are in Florida, because it's the faculty for science, 43 out of 50 they say yes, we do watch. But in the BCom accounting or in the economics faculty, only 11 said yeah, we do. But you can observe that, okay, because of this reason, and then you make a formal logical hypothesis and test them. So I can make a hypothesis and say, probably the students in higher learning who are enrolling in science, whether it's computer science, whether it's in biology, whether it's in microbiology, or whether it's in biochemistry, or whether it's in genetics, or whether it's in botany, they all are interested in sitcoms or in watching sitcoms which emulate or animate science compared to people, students in humanities or in economics or perhaps in education. So we as scientists, you don't just make a guess. You use the process of inquiry, which make an observation. You can just observe. When you observe, you see a pattern forming a logical hypothesis. What do they mean by making an observation? An observation, you see, like now we are coming from Easter, right? When we're coming from Easter, there are people of Statistics South Africa, so they make observation of the numbers. They inquire, oh, this year, last year, how many accidents between the weekend of Easter? They say, oh, in Limpopo there were 300 accidents. Out of those 300 accidents in Limpopo, there were 14 fatalities. Out of those 14 fatalities, only one was a pedestrian. The rest included the small cars. And they check also what time did those incidents happen. They can check or no, those incidents or accidents happen between 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. on the day of before Easter week or the day before Good Friday. Okay, they have the. They also check in Pumalanga. There were only 20 accidents. In Western Cape, there were only 30 accidents. Or they are making an observation that okay, we can see that the N1 and N3 has more accidents during the Easter weekend. That's what we can dispatch. So with that observation, if you check the statistics or the number of accidents which happened in 2022, 2021, 2020, they can say, okay, we expect that if we dispatch number of individuals to go to the road and so that and dispatch them into the roads so that these people could know that maybe accidents will be less this year. Or they could also said in 2020 compared to 2022, they will say there were lesser accidents in the roads during Easter. Somebody will say, yeah, the observation was that many people were home. They didn't go to because there was a lockdown and everything. So you make observation on the numbers and you can be able to predict that there will be how many fatalities. I was talking to somebody else while we were still, I see there is a question. Oh, okay. That's a student number. I once talked to somebody and I was saying science can predict how many people are going to die next year based on the information that we have. The only thing that we just need to find out is that how many people died in the past 5 years, and you can be able to deduce that it's nothing personal. It's nothing to say it's going to be you who's going to be next. It's just the mere fact, statistical fact, numbers, which is also a biological fact, that if you made an observation, you can make an informed prediction or informed expected outcome of the results, that this is what is gonna happen. So that's how they do. So scientists use the process of inquiry that includes making observation and forming logical hypothesis. So exploration and observation. So biologists describe natural structures and processes. So this approach is based on observation and the analysis of data. So I will explain what does that mean of the analysis of the data. So the recorded and observations are called data. So if you are studying or you want to study about, let's say about fish, you want to check how many species, different types of fish they are available in. Anybody just name a dam that you know in KZN. I don't know why I'm lagging to make an example with KZN. Let's say Howick Dam. How many fishes there are in Howick Dam? So you're gonna go to Howick Dam. Either you're gonna be using electrical shocker to trap those fishes and all that. So when you collect those fishes, it's what you call it data. You're collecting and you're observing. So the analysis of data is that you're gonna count, you're gonna record how many fishes did you collect, And when it will start as an individual count. Yes, as an individual count. Then you're gonna categorize it into species level, into population level, and all of that. So it also categorizes into qualitative data, which is often take the form of recorded description. Then there's quantitative data, which are expressed as numerical measurement organized into tables and graphs, which are mostly the ones that on a lower scale that you guys might be given as an assignment or as a mini dissertation for your honors to to go and experience. So this is just a little fella here who will go and be studying. So they will make a recording of the behavior or whatever, or the individual number, what they're doing, where they will be doing. What did you read here? Just on your notes. Okay, I can't read this, but you don't have to worry about this. Then, so there's also an inductive reasoning, which draw conclusion through the logical process of induction. Which is repeating specific observation, which can lead to important generalization, like this inductive reasoning. For example, you will say the sun always rises in the east, or all organisms are made of cells. That's our inductive reasoning. Then forming and testing of hypotheses. What we were talking about is that in the essence, hypothesis is an explanation based on observation and assumption that leads to a testable prediction. So you're gonna make an observation and you're gonna make an assumption. When you make that assumption should be tested, and we should be able to test it. So whatever that you're gonna do as your research, it has to be testable. Somebody else has to come and do the very same thing that you have to. If you are doing an experiment, if you do experiment or you conduct an experiment, somebody else should be able to come and make the similar experiment and be able to come with the different output or similar output of what you have found. And also it must lead to the prediction that can be tested by making additional observation or by performing experiments. Yes. So an experiment is a scientific test carried out under a control condition. Control condition is just a mere fact that you're gonna have to be able to say there's what is happening on the left, there's what is happening on the right, and then there's like the control, the neutral position, which is there. That's what you mean by experiment. Like, for example, your observation, your desk lamp, that it doesn't work, then there's a question. Why doesn't your desk lamp work? Hypothesis is that the bulb is not cool properly. Okay. Or number two, the bulb is burnt out. Both these hypotheses are testable because you can either attempt to screw it tighter or properly and see if the bulb will work. Still doesn't work. Or you can just test if you can just replace the bulb with a new one and you find that working, then you have tested that. And those hypotheses are testable. So,
Mr. Nelufule?
sorry.
Sorry, I just want to come in there also with my own example.
Sure.
And this is the reason for the BLG 1501 and 1502 classes. And that is because each year our student retention unit, who are responsible for the retention of students, as well as the colleges, the lecturers. So what they do is they analyze the exam results of students writing BLG 1501 and 1502, and they then see what the pass rate is, or the percentage of students that has passed. They then compare that to previous years of students who received tutorial classes and students who did not receive tutorial classes, and then came to the conclusion, two conclusions. Yes, this is a high risk subject, which means the failure rate is high. Secondly, they've also concluded that those students that attend tutorial classes have a better chance of passing the class than those. So yes, UNISA does conduct their own experiments, and the fact that we're having this class this morning, and obviously our next class that starts at 11 for BLG1502 was not a guess. It is based on did you say hypothesis? It's an investigation conducted annually, and then these modules are released to the centers to say these are high risk modules, and you will need to give some form of student support, hence the creation of tutorial classes. So I think it is relevant just for our students to have that kind of information, that this has been thoroughly investigated and is a continuous investigation. Thank you.
So while you're still there, Prim, if I'm making a hypothesis in this session, right, it will be okay for me to say all these students, if they continue to attend this session until the end of the semester, they are going to pass. That's it.
100%. 100%.
But yes, you should continue studying, students.
That is the conclusion that has been reached year after year. You will see that this remains a high risk subject, and also the comparison of that those that attend tutorial classes are more likely to pass than those that do.
That is, if somebody was doing such study, will say that is the hypothesis that I have for these high risk models. So this is the example of where you're doing the hypothesis one, where the bulb is not screwed. The prediction is that maybe the bulb will fix the problem, the test then restore the problem. But I don't want to dwell much in this. This just observation explains it very well. So deductive reasoning. So that one was a inductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning is uses general premises to make specific predictions. So the initial observation may give rise to multiple hypotheses there, where we can never prove that a hypothesis is true, but testing it in many ways with different sorts of data can significantly increase our confidence in it. The term significant is just an emphasis to just emphasize if something is successful. So you will hear people always say there is a significant difference, which means that there is a strong possibility, or there is a strong data to support that observation. So the question can and cannot be addressed by science. So, for example, a hypothesis must be testable. We've mentioned that before. And for example, a hypothesis that ghost fooled with the desk lamp cannot be tested. If we are just like saying, why is the bulb not, why is the lamp not working? So the observation, the first one was that it's either is not screwed properly or it bent. But if somebody could just come and say, oh, it is the ghost, that cannot be tested, or that could be described as superstitial or supernatural or religious explanations outside the bounds of science, which cannot be tested. So that's which I'm not disputing the fact that people believe on this. I must make a disclaimer, but I'm just saying at this point, in terms of hypothesis, it should be tested. It should be testable. We should be able to say, okay, let's prove. What is the formula to check if the ghost was here? If there is, if there isn't, then we have to move on. So the flexibility of the scientific process is that scientific method is an idealized process of inquiry, of finding out, but very few scientific inquiries adhere to this approach by backtracking and rethinking, which may be necessary as pathway through through those processes. And this is just an illustration diagram of the forming and testing of hypotheses, which could be comprised of exploration and discovery, where there's analysis and feedback, and where there's essential benefits and outcomes, which are the products of this hypothesis and the formation of this testing and hypothesis, which are beneficiaries of those sociological benefits and their outcomes, which are analysis and feedback from the community. Then forming and testing of hypotheses, testing of ideas, forming hypotheses, predicting results, doing experiments, or making observation, gathering data. What do you do with those data? You analyze them, and after you analyze those results analyze those data, then you're gonna have to analyze those results. And after you analyze those results, you're gonna have to interpret those results. What do they mean? What does that mean? Like what Prim was giving an example. So after you have collected the information, so this means, for example, that Prim was saying, if we continue with these sessions, this means there will be an improvement. There will be a success in the pass rate of the students. At the support of a hypothesis, contradict of a hypothesis, inspire a new revised hypothesis, if that is the case to go. The exploration and discovery, the observation of nature, observing nature, asking question, reading scientific literature. I talk about literature. Literature is what previous studies has done before you, because you're not going to be doing something which is extremely new or just isolated on its own. There's somebody else who have done what you are studying, who has studied before what you are trying to do at the present moment. Then societal benefits and outcome, developing technology, informing policy, solving problem, building knowledge. Usually this form part of the aim. Usually when you study, they will ask you, what is the aim? So you're gonna say the aim of the study is that we need to broadenize the knowledge. We need to solve the entire problem, or the widening of the problem of such and such. Or usually you'll find that in terms of places like government, there are policies that have to be enforced. There are policies which are stagnant or which are not growing. So these benefits and outcomes can help improve such policies or those problems. Then community analysis and feedback and peer review. You publish the knowledge that you have, that is that so that it could be available for everybody else. Replications of findings, publication, consensus building, so that it could be accessible to the entire community of the scientists, or the entire community of the people who are doing similar things that you are also doing. And that's where it is. 1:39. We're gonna end here today.